I'm Michael King. My first name's James, which causes some confusion. There comes a time when you're going to school where you get tired of the teacher thinking it's really hilarious to say King James, calling the roll. And so you become Michael. And I'm from Southwest Virginia. I have family all the way from the Clinch River all the way to the New River. And I grew up mostly in New River Valley. Not from the poorest of families, but we had needs and wants that we didn't always get. I grew up on a farm, and kind of self-sustaining. The kind of, we gathered our eggs, we raised our meat, we raised our garden, that kind of thing. Typical Appalachian family. Not from a family that gets to go to college. Circumstances just opened doors for me. And I have one brother, we take care of our mother now. We live here in Pike County. That's what brought us here together, was wanting to be there for her and to get back together. And so we came from different directions and came back to the place where we could find a job. And this was that place. And for whatever reason, they needed me. And they needed a deaf educator in the county, and it happened at once, and this was the place where that happened. And okay.
And you, obviously you're a professor here. What do you teach?
I teach in education, and I teach a little bit of everything. I have two masters, one in English and one in counseling, and then I have my doctorate in ed psych. And so I get to teach everything from grammar to educational psychology, diversity studies, which tied into a lot with my dissertation, and about anything else they want me to teach. I went through college and kind of dabbled in everything, and so I kind of have enough hours to teach about anything within education. So that's the way it works sometimes.
So I wonder, as a kid, what did you want to do as a kid?
The family laughs. The first thing I told them I wanted to do was to be a fire engine. Not a firefighter, a fire engine. I was a loud kid at one point, so that changed. But I went through phases. I wanted to be a vet. I wanted to be an artist, then a musician, then a vet again. I changed my mind fairly often. By the time I was in high school, I'd taken vocational classes in drafting and a lot of computer science, and I thought that would be the direction I would go. But then that changed when I got to college. But I'm still that kind of person. Every time I see something new, I want to study that. That's what I want to do. And so I changed majors a lot. I floated between this and that and the other thing, and all with good reason, and I don't think any of it was wasted, though. I don't see any place where I regret anything that I've taken or done, because it's all helped in the long run.
A dream job. Some people have a dream job they're aspiring to their whole lives. What's a dream job for you?
I'm enjoying teaching, and I enjoy counseling. I do imagine someday, because I still kind of would like to do art, or I would still kind of like to write, so, which are things I could do now, and I do now, but but sometimes I'd like more time. It's not necessarily I would like a different job, but I would like more hours in a day to do the other things I enjoy. I'd like to have more time to devote to writing, to devote to creating stuff. But I'm not a solitary person. I'm not someone that could lock myself in an office at home somewhere and write all day and be happy. I have to be around people. And I'm kind of an introverted sort, but I still energized by being around people, and they make me feel like I have purpose, and it's hard to feel that sense of purpose when you're in your own world doing what, even if you think it's fun or enjoyable, it's hard to get that feeling of like this really matters.
Did anything happen in life to spur you on to the path that you're on now?
I've had a few things, and one of them was I was blessed enough to be in a school district that was in the shadow of Virginia Tech and Radford University. And even though I didn't come from a family that generally gets to go to college, we had everything there because all these doctoral programs and everything, all these people, we had computers before any other school I knew of had computers. We had people from the colleges roaming the hallways and working with us in the classes. And if you were in the accelerated classes, boy, you got so much attention and so much great instruction, not just lectures, not just taking notes, but people when they are really involved and engaged and doing cutting edge stuff. And so I had some people at the college level, Dr. Ewell, who became my advisor at Radford University, Dr. Riddle, and others that would visit the school that took interest in me. And I wrote a lot. I was the editor of the literary magazine, and so I got to talk to and be a part of what they were doing, and they took an interest in me. They got me to the college multiple times, and Dr. Ewell basically told me, "You're going to college," and so made a lot of that happen, So she was English, which I ended up majoring in, but when I started first because I'd taken drafting, and I went to the community college, and I was going to study drafting and maybe go into architecture or something. And that's when computers and CAD programs were new. And I loved working at a big table and drawing with pencils and creating on the page. But they had these CAD programs. They weren't difficult programs, but the issue was you want to make one line or one shape, and technology wasn't where it is now. And so you'd get one number in slightly wrong, but you'd put it in, you'd tell it to compile, and you'd sit and wait. Sometimes 20 minutes, sometimes an hour, waiting for it to compile. And then you go look at it and something would be wrong. And you go change that number again and try to get it to shift a little bit this way. And I get confused sometimes because sometimes it's coordinates, sometimes it's polar coordinates, so it's different. And it'd be off, it wouldn't be quite right. And then you'd wait another hour and it wouldn't be quite right again. And I spent a lot of all-nighters doing that, and I said, no, I can't do that. The thing is, though, with the way technology is now, I could be doing that and I'd be perfectly happy and would love that. But back then, no way. that made me decide I need to do something else. I tried computer science, which I kind of have a mind for, and it worked well, but it's too solitary. And then back to the vet school idea, and started taking a lot of biology. And the thing that ended that was once I transferred to Radford University, I took anatomy. And they had the little viewing room where you could watch them do the dissections, and they had a human cadaver. And I had a professor, I think, that just liked to freak us out, but he would bring us in there. And we'd do that once a week. We'd have lab, and he would have us look down for part of the lab, and he would show us something and dissect something. And he didn't even have to cut much. I mean, it's an old cadaver, been used a lot. So, but once a week I would pass out. My lips would turn blue, and I'd start getting dizzy, and it's like, okay, medical field's not for me. And I got in the English line. And I was going to change majors. This was before computers were used for that. It's all on paper. And there was this enormous line for all these other majors, and English had like 6 people in it. And one of my friends said, "You bright, you're as editor of a literary magazine there then at Radford, so I said, why don't you do English? It's a short line, you can always go back later in the year and change your major again." I got in the line and graduated as an English major a few years later, you know. So, and I'm an English major because I got in the short line. But I loved it, and I got to work on yearbook and literary magazine and newspaper and all kinds of things that actually got me my first teaching job because they needed someone that could do that. So my hobby became what opened the doors.
Mm-hmm. I know it's hard to summarize a life in a few lines, but I'm going to ask you anyways. If you could define your call or your sense of mission or purpose in a sentence.
Sentence? Wow, that's tough. I think when I think about the idea of, I'll go back to the idea of calling. I'm not sure if I think about the word calling because I think we're called to be who we are and not necessarily what we do. And but for me, the big goal of my life is to love and be loved. And that's what matters to me when I push everything else aside. Family and friends and students and people I get to know, people I don't get to know, and just being able to see them and think, wow, that's cool, they're people, you know, and see that they have the same needs and values and concerns and everything else. But for me, that's been my target all along. And I haven't always known that, but when I sit back and think about the trajectory and everything I've done, it's because I want to be someone who is lovable. I want to be someone that can help other people and who can love. I want to be a part of a group of people, you know, and not just out there. It wasn't one sentence, I'm sorry.
But it's really profound, right? To love and to be loved. And so we think about this call or this identity or role and your current position now as professor of education. Do you feel like that lines up with who you're called to be?
It's a choice for it to be, and it does because I choose for it to be. I could very easily come here and just meet the requirements and not line up at all with caring or giving or making a difference in the way I want to. But I don't, because and maybe in some ways I'd be more productive if I just focused on the task at hand and not the people that I'm helping. But I do think I'm making a difference. I think I'm opening doors, and I hope I'm opening doors, and I hope I'm not missing too many opportunities to open doors. You know, so this is a great place to be, because this is the place where you can show grace and forgiveness and give second chances and third chances and fourth chances, where there's not so many students that if something's going wrong with one of them, you can't go find them and figure out what's going on with them. And that's not always been true. When I did teaching fellowship stuff at Virginia Tech or Radford, when classes had, 200 students or something, you don't do that. You can't. There are a few you're aware of, but for the most part, there's not enough hours in the day to know everyone. And here, by the time these students graduate, they're a family. And we're a small enough department. And I've been here going on 14 years. And I see people that were in classes with me the first year, those cohorts that went through, I see them out eating together. And, and I see them out in the community together, because that's the kind of place that we have.
Now, in your call or your mission or your purpose, if someone was watching this and they said, "Oh my goodness, Dr. King, you are living the life that I want to live," what did you do to put yourself in position to do what you're doing now?
Not to make it sound passive or anything, because it wasn't. I've worked really, really hard. But mostly it's been opportunities would happen and I'd walk through the door. Somebody'd open it and I'd walk through. And I'd hear about something and it sounded right, and so I would try it. And so, and I guess from the very beginning, everything I've done, it's just been, I saw something, and I always like shiny things, and that looks shiny, so there I go. And then something else would, and I moved to something else, and so, and I think that's important to, just not to be static. We can get into our little ruts and just live there forever. And to keep into perspective also that just because you may be able to make a difference here doesn't mean you won't be able to make a difference somewhere else, and maybe even a bigger difference somewhere else. That makes it hard to leave things, because you're always leaving behind something. But we have to look toward the future too, and look to, well, what comes next, and what opportunities will be missed if I don't keep moving forward. And we burn out if we're static, if we just stay somewhere. I've had a lot of jobs I've loved, but I haven't moved, because if a door opens, it probably opened for a reason.
I think about that dynamic of hard work, but also your willingness to take a risk, move out when the door opens, it must be open for a reason. And in those paths, like you said, you've been involved in a lot of different things. Something shiny, you jumped into it. Obviously, you've had a big influence on other people, whether as a counselor or a professor or a fellow student or as a family member or friend. But who's influenced you the most on your path to help you understand who you are to be, or who you are and what you should do?
A lot of it's been my family, and it's not necessarily just one, but being first generation to go to college, my mother's always been there. And even if she didn't know what I was trying to achieve all the time, she was always there pushing. And my grandfather, who was a very hard worker, and who spent a whole lifetime doing some things he enjoyed, but mostly just working really, really hard. And I went through a point even where I would think about what I wanted to do, and one of the things that he told me one time was, if you do stuff for other people, you can do them no matter what job you have. And so sometimes, even if that's not your job, it can be even more powerful when you do things for people, because that's not your job. You know, and so that weighed heavily in my mind when I tried to think about what I want to do, because and teaching is a place where I directly try to help people, you know, and try to, that's the nature of this job. But even if I'd ended up being an architect or an artist or a musician or anything else, all those things I do, I could still do. The job is a job. The people are what matter.
Obviously, you're very people-driven, right? You like your quiet time, but you need people, and your career has been about people. So you've had a lot of critical conversations with others, particularly as a counselor. I mean, my goodness, right?
Mm-hmm.
When someone comes to you and they say, you know, Dr. King, I just have no idea what I'm supposed to do with my life, what advice do you have for them?
Try things. Try things out. Like my 100 majors. Well, if you really got to lose, I mean, don't go into great debt and everything, but maybe you just haven't found what you love yet. Or maybe you haven't experienced it in a way where you recognize it as what you really want. Just explore. And also, it never hurts to talk to the people around you and ask them, what do you see in me? What advice can you give me? You know, and because I may not know the student, but there are people out there who've watched them grow up and watch what they do and how they behave and what they have enjoyed their whole lives. And sometimes it's just simple, somebody just coming up and saying, well, you always seem to be doing this. Why don't you do that? And I've had a lot of clients as a counselor, you know, where someone would say that, say, well, this seems to be what you enjoy. Why aren't you doing that? And the light bulb goes off. Say, I can do that. Yeah, you can do that. It's your life. So, but